Every diet just gets harder. You've been at this for years. You're having the same conversations with yourself and you're trying to be sensible about it all. You're trying to do it right this time. You're trying to find something that you can stick to long term. It makes sense you're frustrated because you want it to work. Why else would you be putting in all of this effort? But the goal isn't to keep trying to survive fat loss, to keep trying to just get by so you can get to this end point. The goal is to build a life that you don't need another diet. You don't want to keep being in this, okay, well, I'm actually ready to tighten it up now because I'm focused. You reach like this point where you just had enough, you're uncomfortable with more uncomfortable than ever than where you're at. So you just want to tighten up a little bit. But how many times does that happen? This is where I've come to realize a huge reason for this is because you've been told that 1200 calories is too aggressive. You want to be able to make this something that is quote unquote balanced, that you're able to keep doing for life. But if you keep having to diet, you're doing something wrong. I would say that that is the least sustainable thing ever, because how many times are you pulling yourself away? Actually, it's not even pulling yourself away, because this whole time you're still uncomfortable. That's what this podcast is here to cover. After the last episode where I spoke about fast versus slow fat loss, because that's the wrong question to ask. It's more so about fat loss being a tool, but it needing a phase, a distinct phase. And it needs a setup. It needs a real reason to be there, a structure, and it needs an exit. A faster approach can almost definitely be the better option. And to be honest, it's probably the one that you would benefit from most for quite a few reasons I'll dig into shortly. It only is going to work as it should without the rebound, without the fear of your metabolism crashing or becoming unrecoverable, hormones chucking a stir. The only way this is going to be the thing that pretty much kills any other need for another diet, because it works, you get results, you build confidence, is if you plan it. You need to get yourself in a place to make it so it doesn't feel like another hell, another fight, or something that you do gain it all back. And to get into a position to effectively diet. Because an effective diet is not feeling like all the effort you're putting in doesn't equate to the same results, because in fat loss, you should be seeing results pretty fast. One of my clients, she lost in pounds, it works out to be about 30 pounds, 13 kilos in less than 12 weeks. Less than 12 weeks. It was like 10 weeks of proper focused fat loss, because it took her about 2 weeks to get into the mindset of it all, which is normal. 12 weeks. Now, a lot of you would be saying, how can you lose more than a pound in a week? Or more than half a kilo in a week? Most of you might be like, yeah, well, that's easy for her. I'm perimenopausal. I'm this. It's my age. She's 55. And then I have another 53-year-old client who was doing cardio every day, sometimes twice a day. She was lifting heavy, lifting hard. She came to me thinking, okay, well, I don't actually know what's missing, but something's telling me that you have the answers. That was literally her words. And you can listen to a conversation if you want. She's the one that did a podcast with me, Amy. I can link it down below, or you can message me if you want to hear her story, if her story sounds familiar to you. But now, for the first time ever, she's in a place where she isn't even struggling with the calories she's on in a diet. She's still getting stronger. She still has energy, speechless about how much easier it is. She only has positive things to say. Whereas you can imagine, or you probably are in the situation yourself where you could never imagine such a thing, because she couldn't either. And this isn't our first rodeo. I don't like putting people through a full, proper, serious one where I'm really on top of it the first time round. To me, that's kind of like, okay, let's do a rehearsal. It's like a wedding rehearsal. It should be taken just as seriously, because this is meant to be a marriage. So you want to rehearse for the things that truly matter. That's kind of how I see it. You're in a marriage with your body. Don't wing this shit. Don't take it lightly, because the consequence isn't just gaining weight back. It's metabolism, it's health, it's your future, it's independence, because all of this stuff carries a risk. fat is adipose tissue, comes with many diseases when it's in excess. And as you enter perimenopause, it doesn't even have to be excess for it to be a health risk, because now it goes away from the more safer regions like subcutaneous, hips, butt, and it starts transferring itself to your stomach. And that is a risk, a health risk, because most of that's visceral fat. And visceral fat, luckily, also is the easiest thing to lose. It's the first thing to lose. And that's something I'll also be touching on when I get into the perimenopause episode, where most of the time you probably won't even realize that you're losing the fat because most of it comes from the visceral fat first before you start to see it with the subcutaneous. And this is why what you choose to measure your progress matters for where you are right now. For many of my ladies, I actually don't use a scale. For one of them, I need to use a scale because I want to actually see what her body's doing, but I don't want her to use it. So instead, we were going to use a Bluetooth scale, but she said that she was happy to just step on it, face away, and have her husband take it. Because even if fat loss is the goal, the scale can still be your biggest sabotage. I've seen it, even with my most veteran clients. Something about that number can really throw you off. Even if you have a good relationship with it, it does something to your head, just like summer does. But for many of us who don't really have such tight cling on it, yeah, okay, cool. Just be honest with yourself about it. These are all things that matter in this phase. It's hard to believe. It's hard to get your nervous system to be okay with it if it doesn't have the proof. And that's something that I can relate to because I didn't have the proof yet. And even when I do have the proof, it's not just about that, which I'm going to just lightly touch on now. You need to be able to feel like you're in control of your environment and that your expectations are meeting your reality, and to not keep fighting your reality with your expectations, but to try to bring them on sync with each other. Otherwise, this is going to be a grueling fight. Before you cut again, there is an entry criteria that no one talks about, but it is essential. There are many studies that show why early fast results, like early meaningful results, matter so much more than what a lot of you realize or what we want to believe. When someone comes into coaching, one of the best things I can do as a coach is to help them feel like they are moving forward. And this is why it is extremely hard for someone who is like skinny fat or under-muscled or undershaped, or someone who doesn't yet realize that dieting is not the answer, to be able to see results and feel like they're progressing, because the very thing that they need or think they need to feel a result early is never going to give it to them, because where they're at, it isn't going to give them the actual outcome that they want. It's going to stay transitory. It's going to stay like a temporary dopamine hit, which makes it very hard to then get the buy-in to then go into the results. And this is where mindset becomes key. But it's belief either way that changes your behavior. Once we get that belief, once you can see that, okay, well, if forcing and focusing on fat loss, even when you have a lot of fat to lose, has not worked before, then it makes sense that we need to try it a different way. It's just realizing it doesn't mean you're going to get fat, you're going to gain weight, you're going to lose progress. No, because I know that is a real fear. You don't feel like you're lean enough to earn it yet. But we want to do the things that are going to give you a real return, because once you start to notice that, everything changes. And that's why I think this criteria is the most important thing to start with, because it gives you somewhere to focus. It's just constantly reminding yourself of it. Because this phase, it doesn't just fix, quote unquote, your metabolism, your fat loss responsiveness. It's about creating the food structure, having your protein there. Yes, getting your metabolism up. Yes, getting your potential to get lean and stay lean. Yes, getting up your ability to adhere and be more robust and resilient to fat loss, which, surprise, comes from your training. Because if your training quality is there, if your training skills there, if we're able to keep adding and adding and adding, just like Amy is still in an aggressive fat loss phase where I work with her on it. I kind of took care of that so it doesn't feel like scarcity, and she isn't feeling it. She isn't really feeling the impact of it either because of the way that we set it up. That's what this pre-diet phase fixes. She did that. We did a rehearsal diet, but in the whole process, she, even at her quote unquote maintenance calories, she's been losing fat. She's been dropping. She doesn't look dramatically different on a month-to-month basis or even a few months basis. But when you look from this year to last year, you can see the change. She's built so much muscle and lost fat because of where she started, and not everyone can be there. And that's the most exciting part. And that's why we need to focus away from phases and just focus on what you need and then attacking that consistently and putting your blinders on. And that's the checklist I'm running you through, because sometimes fat loss isn't the bottleneck. Sometimes it's the want, the desire, the desperation for fat loss that's the bottleneck. Because is more fat loss actually going to create not just the visual result that you want, but is it going to be the thing that keeps you stuck to the program in a successful way to get results, or is it going to keep you in the same washing machine yo-yo? At some point, even if you have fat to lose, fat loss isn't going to be the next move. You can't keep focusing there, especially if you're not really seeing anything from it. This is where yo-yo dieting makes every diet much harder. That's pretty much what this is. Women, actually, it's worse. Over time, you're going to get softer. Over time, you're predisposing yourself to way more belly fat gain, way more hormonal and metabolic issues, because this cycle isn't passive. This cycle isn't gaining and losing the same 5 kilos. It's losing muscle in the process as well, but you're only gaining fat back. You're not gaining muscle back. Sometimes it might look like it, but that's just your muscles filling up with water. We want to be keeping as much muscle as we can when we diet. It might seem like we're losing some sometimes, but that's just it losing its hydration and shrinking, but it's going to come back much faster if you do this right. The goal is to keep as much as possible, to maintain your strength as much as possible, and to lose as much fat as possible in as short of a period of time as possible, so you can get your ass out. Because you ain't building anything in your half-ass and in and out. I'm non-committal. Let's just call it non-committal to dieting, because most of you are not ever in a place to build muscle, and you're not allowing yourself an effective enough fat loss phase. So then what are you doing? That's what I call a plateau, but that's not even a plateau. That's slowly getting worse. It's just knowing where to look. So that brings me to the first question. Have you built enough to reveal? The whole, wow, I'm seeing more muscle. It looks like I'm building muscle and losing fat at the same time. That doesn't last for long. It feels like it is. That's borrowed muscle. Muscle building doesn't first come with the muscle fibers growing. There's the neural adaptations, which is the strength, the brain, the getting more efficient at movement. And then there's the sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, which is always going to come with some myofibrillar, but you can't really tangibly put a number on it. No studies have shown that, which is the cellular fluid around the muscle that allows for the muscles to grow. So if we want to get a little bit more sciencey here, it's the carbohydrates, creatine, if you take creatine, it's hydration in itself. If you're not hydrated, you could fail sets in the gym and it not be effective because you went in dehydrated or not hydrated enough, because you also need the water in there. It's in this sarcoplasm that these, let's just say, calcium ions are then fed into the muscles to allow them to contract and release. And if you don't have enough of that around the muscle fibers, there's not going to be enough for it to use, and that's part of the process. That's early fatigue without the muscles getting what they want. To the question, have you built enough to reveal? Have you built enough training capacity? Are you lifting consistently? Are you able to hinge, brace? Do you know how to use your lats? Is your execution repeatable? Are you hitting range of motion? Do you have any mobility restrictions? All of that's going to make it really damn difficult for you to increase. I had a client say the most powerful thing. I never realized how difficult it was to hinge. If I remember correctly on the call, she thought that I'm actually paying way more attention to my training now. I'm watching all this. I'm watching all the movements. I'm watching these form checks. I'm really paying attention to it now because I want to do it right. Even then, you don't know what you don't know. And we've had to scale back a lot of the hinge movements to learn the pattern. There's nothing wrong with that. You can keep trying to force it, but it's not going to suddenly make the system start working at a higher level. It'll just keep churning the same rate, and eventually it'll start breaking down. Another client said it herself. It was actually really worth dropping all the weight back and humbling herself with form, even as a coach herself, having to do that. Because now she's stronger than ever before, with way more control than before, and also a lot more glutes. Like, her glutes have actually grown now because she's using them. So there's the first part of it. Because if you diet without a strong training signal, you're much more predisposed to losing metabolism, losing muscle, and then the smaller, weaker you becomes the future yo-yo you. We don't want that. The next most important thing is having protein and meal structure in place. It's not obsessive. It is far from obsessive. If you don't plan your meals ahead, if you don't prep your protein ahead, if you don't prep your veggies and fruits and already have a great whole food base, you're not going to be successful in fat loss. Like I said, fat loss is not meant to be sustainable. You're going to be hungry. You're going to have to make sacrifices, and you're going to have to be okay with, eating some green veggies, which I think this is also where fat loss gets misconstrued, because dieting doesn't mean bland food. Flavor the thing, like put spices with it, put herbs with it, put soy sauce with it, like flavor the thing, put hot sauce with it. Just don't go doing those silly calorie laden stuff or oh, this is organic stuff when it's not, it's actually not fat loss friendly. Just check the calories, but also check the serving size, because something can get away with saying it's only 2 calories. Like if it's a spray oil, no, it is freaking calorie dense. It says 0 calories. No, it's the same calories as the oil that you pour on from the bottle. It's just that they're allowed to get away with it because it's in the spray can. So have your protein there, have your meal structure there. Protein is so important, and I am sick of the industry now downplaying it, saying, oh, you're eating more protein than you need. You actually don't need all that much. Yeah, actually, the more protein that you have, if you've ever heard of the protein sparing modified fasting protocols that are out there for people that have the guidance to do them, protein is pretty much the majority of the diet in grains. And the only way people get in fats is by taking essential fatty acid, like EPAs, like taking the actual fish oils, the omega oils that are pure EPA and DHA. It's much more calorie friendly while getting in the essential oils. And it's only for a short period of time. The more aggressive you go, then the timing, the duration of the diet matters a fuck ton. The issue is that most people don't have a defined rate. They don't have a defined duration. They don't have a defined exit. It just becomes this. It was only one. This doesn't matter. Oh, it's just a one. Oh, but I need to make it sustainable. I need to have balance. No, that's not what we're doing here. And that's why I'm saying this. Have that protein and meal structure in place. Make the sacrifice to plan your food ahead. Don't just log in today's meal plan after the fact or even the night before. Log the whole week. Have the plan there. This is for a short period. And if you set this whole thing up right, you're not going to blow it at the end because you know what to return to. The issue is that most people don't have something to return to. They don't know what anything outside of dieting looks like. So they feel like this sacrifice needs to be forever. That investment is the most worth it thing ever because you don't just not get results. There's a cost of inaction. There's a cost to every failed attempt, to every struggle, because that is going to leak into the confidence that you start to lack, the lack of self-trust and all of that. As much as it doesn't feel like it matters, or as much as you feel like you can start to grind through it, no, it becomes your very bottleneck. It's never about the calories, and 1,200 calories is not too aggressive. It is not the issue. Learning how to eat in a conducive way for just a healthy body, a healthy metabolism in general, is generally going to make any fat loss phase easier. Your metabolism more efficient. You're giving your body the vitamins, the minerals, the stuff it needs, so your thyroid functions properly, so your hormones function properly, so your metabolism does what it needs to do. More energy, more clarity, your digestion is working. You're absorbing what you need from your food. You're burning more effectively. That's exactly why the more food that you can eat in a diet thing exists. And I'm all for that. But it doesn't mean eating as much as you can at a high end of your deficit or in a slight deficit, not doing all that much. It means building up every baseline so that it is still the same extent of a deficit, because your body will function better. You'll have more energy. You'll stop feeling so sluggish. So we got training. Do you have anything underneath? We got protein. We got meal structure. Fitting into what I just mentioned with the building up of your metabolism, having your overall daily movement up there as well. You can't just rely on hard training. You can't just rely on prescribed cardio, because that is not your non-intentional movement. We already talked about there needing to be a start point, an end point, and a defined phase, because it is a phase. Fat loss is a phase. Everything else outside of fat loss is where we're able to build muscle. Can't do that in a fat loss phase. That's why sometimes most of what you need is not another deficit. It is recalibration. It's getting yourself in a place to diet so you can live and thrive on something more than friggin' like 1,600 calories, because that isn't thriving. If you keep dieting because you get triggered, we already know how that ends. Everything you do really does need strategy. It needs the preemptive thought of the afterthoughts. Like, what's the exit strategy? Do you know what it's going to look like outside of it? And that's where those diet breaks can come in. Each diet chunk is going to look different for each person based on what you can handle. But the more time you can spend away from this half fulfilling, the better. The worst thing you can do is be in unintentional maintenance. Be putting in all of this mental effort without the physical stuff lining up. Keep in mind the context from above, because it really does matter. The order that most people do all of this in is completely backwards. That's what we're changing, because fat loss phases need to be deliberate, but they have a few requirements. Number one, you want to have a training program that stays in place and is maintained as best as possible throughout. It can come with changes. For advanced lifters, it probably will, because your recovery cost is higher. You're going to need to account for that. Everything has a recovery cost, and if you're not protecting that, that's where your results can go backwards, and that's where you can struggle and find it even harder. If you're in perimenopause, your recovery cost is going to be higher for everything you do, because your body is more sensitive to stress. Your hormones are fluctuating. So we need to tread carefully. You want your protein high, actually higher than when you were in a building phase, because it's going to have satiety effects. And I am not talking about sculling shakes. If anything, I would say protein shakes are the worst thing to have in a diet. They're not going to fill you up. You want mastication, as in you want to be able to chew your food, something that has more texture to it, because that is what is going to fill you up. The more whole foods you have as well will put you into more of a deficit than what you're eating. Your body will burn more calories to eat that food. This is where sometimes deficits on paper can either equal to be more or less at the body level. If you're eating a lot of processed foods, you might need a much bigger deficit on paper. If you're eating a lot more whole foods, you might find that you end up having a bigger deficit at the body level. Same with protein. Protein has a higher thermic effect, way higher thermic effect. You burn a lot more to digest protein, especially whole food protein. In fact, this is probably the most important point. You want a deficit that's large enough to produce progress. That is the part that people miss. Because your deficit isn't large enough, every little bit, especially if you're a female. I'm sorry, females. I'm sorry. I'm a female too. If anything, I have it worse. If I didn't have the things in place to make it easier for myself, which I can talk about on a future episode. I'm like 5'1". In being a shorter woman, you can't actually go with the usual prescriptions because you're tiny. Percentage of your body weight in fat grams. But it also means that what those fat grams are made of counts a lot more. You want most of it to be polyunsaturated, monounsaturated, mostly omegas if you can. That also has a metabolic cost because it's the mono and polyunsaturated that have more of those healthful effects, but also omegas. Carbs are actually the hormonal cure, so to speak. They're the ones that are going to help with your thyroid. Your thyroid, your leptin, the hormone that is actually sabotaging your fat loss is leptin. That's mostly influenced from carbs. Your satiety is also influenced from carbs. The metabolic boost you get from my refeeds is you get a lot more training output. You get a lot more of a mental boost. You get more of an overall energy boost. Satiety boost. Well, only for a short period of time before you're hungry again in deficit, which is normal. But you're performing at like a bigger level while still being down here, because you probably were performing at like this level and now you're up here, and that makes it a bigger deficit for a period of time. That's the metabolic boost, because it all comes from carbs. Like, I only put up carbs when I put up calories for that. Even in diet breaks, it's just carbs. Next, you need a clear endpoint, not just until I feel lean enough, until I hit my goal, until I feel good enough about my body. That's never going to happen. You're going to end up more critical of your body, thinking nothing's happening fast enough, not lean enough. Everything's going to feel worse in it, because that's typically what happens when fat loss becomes the focus for many people. I've heard of competitors that are most critical of themselves a few weeks out when they're at their leanest, especially a couple of weeks later when they just feel like they're fluffy, which, hands up, that was me. I was still really lean. So you need a clear endpoint, and that means leave it even if you don't feel like you got enough out of it. Make sure that maintenance actually isn't seen as a moot point, as taking a break, because it's not. It's not even maintenance. There is just fat loss phase and the rest. And this is why it matters more than fat loss itself, because it's that sets you up for fat loss to work. But most women blow it up before fat loss even begins. If you're over 35, this fat loss phase distinction matters so much more, so much more. You don't have a chance to wing it. the cost of chronic restriction is not only higher, the recovery from aggressive dieting is not only way slower, both metabolically and hormonally, but your window for building is precious. Your ability to build is fragile. Permanent restriction mode at 42, way more expensive than at 27, than at 32. That cost gets higher. The urgency, but you want that urgency to show itself in action on the right act, not in let's just throw everything at the wall and hope that something eventuates from it. Even though I know that you probably just want to push it harder without hoping something eventuates from it. We typically think that it's working. And I don't want you to fall into that trap. Make sure you have that in place. And if we really want numbers on it, I typically like my girls to aim for like 800 grams of fruit and veg. If you can get more, that's even better. Aim for 2.2 grams per kilo. If you can get more, even better from Whole Foods. If anything, I would say that 4 meals serves you a lot better than 6. Every time you eat, you're kind of like stimulating your appetite. I would say that snacks don't benefit you. Turn it into a mini meal. Try not to drink your calories. Find what foods satiate you. Don't put in foods that leave you feeling empty afterwards. Try to make the extras as sparing as possible. Plan ahead. Check your event calendar for when you have any events. You can't just say no to those, but you need to have a plan ahead of time. What are you going to do to manage it so that you can still stay on plan and make sacrifices? Because this is for a short time. You don't want it to turn into a lifestyle. We don't want all food choices to become this whole holy moral decision. We don't want to feel restricted because that's what creates the craving cycle. But knowing what you're in for gets rid of that. It prevents the spiraling. That's why what happens outside of the diet itself is the real work. If that doesn't sound like something you can commit yourself to, then you're not ready for a fat loss phase yet, even if you have fat to lose. Living in a deficit or trying to lose weight forever is not the goal. You need a clear runway and realism. Because, be honest, do you want this to work? If you feel like it is more fat loss that you need because you're still soft, that is where it's just a come to Jesus talk with what is it that you actually need and how long do you need to commit to that actual phase for to get the results you want. Because sometimes what we want and what we need are two different things, but you need to trust the process because sometimes it really does mean you need to commit properly to building. You need to commit properly to the actions that are going to take you to that. I really want to talk about why, if you feel like you've done this thing before and you always feel like your body just adapts or it doesn't respond and you're doing all the right things, I want to get clearer on what metabolic adaptation is and why it's a myth, because it actually is a myth. It's brought on by ourselves and we can pretty much abolish it completely so our metabolism doesn't adapt. We can make fat loss so much easier by dieting on higher calories if we also know how to go about that too. Just eat more food and carbs and all that in general with our body responding in a favorable way. That's what I want to talk about in the next podcast. A blueprint for where you can focus and get results, where you can still see your body composition changing without needing a diet for it. That's the part that always gets missed because it's always diet, 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 but you're not shown how this stuff that doesn't seem to relate to you right now because all you're thinking is, I need to get more toned and tight. Your belly fat this and menopause and hormones. I'm doing everything right. I'm following the training. Already on a program, training's not the issue, but maybe it's just that you don't actually see it as that, like most of my clients do. And that's why the buy-in matters most. Then you start to see where the dots connect, and that's why I'm the person that connects the dots. And I'm going to do that for you in the next few episodes. Stay tuned. There will be one with me featuring Adam again soon, and hopefully I get a few more with him. That's the only way that you get past your stuck zones. That's the only way you stop spiraling, because you can't see outside of your own echoey chamber. You can't read a label from inside the box. You can't have new beliefs or new ways of thinking, new paths, if you never give yourself time to explore them. And this is where therapy fails. It's not just having someone show you all these different signs outside of yourself. If you're not giving yourself that time to explore them, to sit with them, to go outside your own little sphere and try to connect the dots, it's very difficult to then move forward. I always find that my most successful clients have had or still have some therapy at some point, if that's the bottleneck. The last thing we want, I'm going to say it again to end this podcast, the last thing we want is to restart the whole stupid cycle again. We don't want that to happen. If fat loss is the only thing that can make you feel successful, it exactly will. That's the cycle that is. That's the thing that's going to happen again. We want to have success come in many ways. We want to have you see that fat loss isn't something to even want or aspire to. It becomes something that is a needed part of your plan to get to your goals. It's actually something you can execute now because it's not about the urgency. It's about, no, I'm approaching this like a mature businesswoman. I'm going through this fat loss phase exactly as I should because I want to hurry up and get out of it and return to my normal life. I want out. Fat loss is not easy. It's actually meant to be the hardest part. Living life is meant to be something where you thrive. And that's what I want for you. I want you to know what it's like to feel like on the other side, where you're not so tied to these massive changes, the metrics, the scale, and you don't need them to stay motivated. You don't need them to have your body stay lean or good enough or on track, because that's what I call freedom. And if you want that for you and you want someone to just make it easier, take the guesswork out, DM me on Instagram, transform X Ruby. If there's anything else, just let me know and I will cover it in a future episode. But you have those next 2 episodes to look forward to. Anyway, I will speak to you on the next episode and you will hear this voice then. I'm trying to keep ads away. So if you could share this to a friend, if you could rate this 5 stars, or just give me a message, any feedback, it will mean the world to me. And with that,